to a wife who's 10 years younger. Even after our daughter was born, my wife kept on working. Probably due to my low income. But the real reason, uncovered after decades, made me rethink what family means. My name's Michael Smith. 65 years old. I'm living with my wife, 10 years younger than me, and our daughter, who's turning 28 this year. And right now, we're on a trip together.
Hey, Dad! The view is amazing!
My daughter exclaims with joy, and my wife watches her with a serene expression. It's pure bliss, but getting here wasn't easy. It's been a tough, diligent journey, filled with moments where I almost lost heart. One event from about 5 years ago remains unforgettable. I married my wife, Sarah, when I was 36. Back then, I had given up marriage, busy with work, until I fell for Sarah, who was working as a cleaning staff at my company. She wasn't the cheerful type, but her dedication to her job won me over. Sarah was 26 at the time. Despite the age gap, I pursued her relentlessly. But Sarah was hesitant, not just about marriage, but even dating. Yet, I couldn't give up on her. "I'll accept everything about you," I said with determination, and she agreed, tears in her eyes. As we got married, I learned a bit about her past. Her parents had divorced when she was young, and she lived with her mother. Her mother was hospitalized and not expected to live much longer. I could understand why Sarah was cautious about marriage. Of course, I was prepared for the 10 years age difference. I knew that a traditional marriage wasn't for us. And so, our belated newlywed life began. With my modest salary, Sarah had to work too. I told her even a part-time job a few days a week would be fine, but she insisted on working 5 days a week, saying,
"I can't rely on you alone."
Sometimes, she even took night shifts. It wasn't a luxurious life, but it was a happy one. A few years into our marriage, our daughter, Emily, was born. From society's perspective, we started parenting late, but I couldn't care less. A daughter is just adorable. I worked harder, and Sarah continued working while raising Emily. "You don't have to push yourself," I'd say, but my wife never showed signs of struggle. Emily grew up healthy and strong. However, as she grew, she went through a rebellious phase. Moreover, the fact that her parents were older than most and my lower income forced us into a modest lifestyle deepened the rift between us.
You're okay with making Mom work so hard?
Emily once said. I had no response, only an apology. "I'm sorry." But around that time, I started to plan for my resignation, like a finish line, on the horizon. Just a little more patience, I thought. Days passed by. Emily graduated high school and found a job without saying much. I didn't know what to say to my quietly working daughter. As the days were coming closer, I was nearly reaching my goals. As a first step, I suggested to Sarah that it might be time for her to quit her job. We didn't have to worry about money anymore, and I thought it would be better for Sarah's health to stop working. "I'm sorry for making you push yourself so hard," I told her, but she firmly replied.
"I'll continue working."
Was I not trusted enough? But I couldn't bear it if she harmed her health. There was no need to beat around the bush, but when I was about to tell her something I had been holding back since my resignation,
"I have a debt,"
she said with a trembling voice, the first time I'd ever heard her sound like that. We hadn't bought a house or anything, so there was no debt on this home. Confused about what she meant, Sarah continued with tears in her eyes.
"It's the debt my father left behind."
Apparently, Her father had made a significant debt with her mother as a co-signer. After the divorce, her father disappeared, and a debt worth hundreds of thousands of dollars fell on her mother. Sarah decided to repay the debt in place of her mother, working non-stop since her teenage years.
I want to pay it off by myself. I don't want to trouble you or Emily.
The reason Sarah was cautious about marriage might have been this debt all along. For decades, while contributing to our household, she had been repaying a debt for a father she couldn't even remember. Shocked by this revelation, I was speechless. "How much is left?" I asked, and she said about $10,000. Sarah calculated that she could pay it off in about 2 more years with her job, and she insisted on not quitting until then. And those 2 years would coincide with my resignation. This unexpected truth threw off all my plans, but "Thank you for talking about that." Holding her hand for the first time in decades. We didn't talk much more that day. I didn't know how to respond to my wife's past, which I had been unaware of for over 20 years. I could understand her strong desire to finish it herself. What was the right thing to do as a husband, a father, and the head of the family? As I pondered, time cruelly passed, and Sarah went to work every day. Then, one night, Emily had left for her usual night shift. Alone in the dimly lit living room, lost in thought, the door to my daughter's room opened. She often went to the kitchen for water and then silently returned to her room. I expected silence today too, but Emily stood in front of me and sharply asked,
What are you going to do about Mom's debt?
Her question caught me off guard, as I was just thinking about it. It was about Sarah. It was unthinkable she would tell Emily before me, so she must have overheard our conversation. Unable to respond, Emily sighed and said,
I feel sorry for Mom, marrying someone like you.
before going back to her room. The Emily's words were deeply engraved in my heart for several days, even now, because they were the core words that I had tried not to think about. Sarah's secret and Emily's presence. As a father, the decision I ultimately made. It was to maintain the status quo. Neither forcing Sarah to quit her job nor paying off the debt myself. We just decided to continue living as we have for another 2 years. Though I didn't declare it, Emily's attitude towards me became even more scornful, realizing I wouldn't do anything. Sarah seemed to realize Emily knew about the debt and once murmured,
Thank you.
to me. Those 2 suffocating years passed. I resigned. Resigning was tough financially, but I was grateful to the company for employing someone as ordinary as me without any particular skills. At 60, I felt like I was finally at the starting line of my life. I had to make new resolutions. As a first step, on the night I retired, I told Sarah and Emily, we need to talk. And for the first time in years, we had a family dinner in the living room. Sarah, who was in her 20s when we met, is now 50. Emily, who once was so small, is now 23 years old. And here I am at 60. Just looking at those numbers, you might think we're a bit of an odd family. But this was always expected. It was precisely because I knew this would happen that I made a certain resolve back then. It was something quite plain and unexciting, but earnest. I resign today. Of course, I don't expect you 2 to celebrate, but I do want to apologize to you both. I said this, looking at Sarah, who seemed on the verge of tears, and Emily, who wouldn't even make eye contact. I'm truly sorry for always making you endure this. I've been a pathetic father. I apologized. But from now on, I plan to dedicate everything to you too. Not time, but money. With that, I placed a savings book on the table. For the first time, Emily looked at me, peeking at the numbers in the savings book with confusion. Her eyes must be counting zeros one by one. When our eyes met again, it was clear the amount far exceeded their expectations. "I've been saving all along." How great it would have been to declare, like in a soap opera, that I was actually a millionaire. But, I'm just an average guy. Of course, I've spent money on the house and on my daughter, but I've avoided personal expenses as much as possible to save up to this point.
Why would you?
Sarah murmured. "I'm 60 now. I'll probably be the first one to go." Saying it out loud, I also feel it's irresponsible. But this was the resolve I had when I married Sarah, who was 10 years younger. I could never be a great father. So, at least, I wanted to work hard and leave as much money as I could for my beloved family. So, this is for you two to use freely. Sarah, of course, you can use it to pay off the debt. But also for your own desires.
Wait a minute.
Emily interrupted, standing up and retreating to her room. Her expression was a mix of haste and surprise. A look I had never seen before. Then she came back from her room, holding a savings book in her hand.
I also saved up a little for Mom's debt.
The first record in her savings book was from about 2 years ago. Around the time she asked me,
"What are you going to do about Mom's debt?"
She probably thought to repay it herself after seeing my inaction. Tears flowed from Sarah's widened eyes, but she stood up and pulled a document from her bag. It showed a large sum and the word, "Paid in full." Sarah had managed to pay off her father's debt exactly as planned.
The reason I could pay off a debt for a father I don't even remember is thanks to you both.
Sarah began with a trembling voice.
You two showed me the strength and beauty of family. I couldn't have endured it alone.
2 savings books and 1 document lay on the table. Each one has its own money written on it, but each of them seemed like crystallization that had been steadily accumulated for the sake of the family. Sarah reached out and grabbed Emily's hand.
Emily, sorry for being such pathetic parents. But both your father and I truly love you. You'll understand someday.
Tears had wetted Emily's face before we knew it.
Dad, I'm sorry for everything.
Hearing her shaky voice made my vision blur. Then Sarah, holding Emily's hand with her right, took mine with her left and said,
Please don't talk about going to the heaven first. Our family is surely becoming a real one from today.
5 years have passed since then. The 3 of us were on a family trip. Next month, Emily is getting married, and this trip was partly in celebration of that. While enjoying the view, Emily suddenly became quiet, then turned to me and said,
Dad, thank you for everything up to now. You're still gonna be there for me when I need you, right?
She said this with a smile. Sarah was already in tears before me. Indeed, as my wife said, since that time, we've become a truly harmonious family, not mismatched at all. And thinking that we are about to welcome a new member to our family fills me with even more zest for life.